Workers at Volkswagen have launched rolling strikes in an escalating dispute at one of Germany's biggest employers.
Where the president of the European Council and the European Commission talked up closening ties and their bid to ratify the CETA free trade agreement with Ottawa.
The trade tensions between Germany and the United States are now affecting what was once considered one of the calmest and most harmonious relationships in the Western world. This time, another economic giant across the Atlantic, Canada, is also involved. The outcome is a scenario that would have been unimaginable just 5 years ago.
Any steel coming into the United States is going to have a 25% tariff.
NAT Germany, the European powerhouse, and Canada, the North American powerhouse, are engaging in discussions on a joint response to US tariffs on steel, aluminum, and automobiles. Meanwhile, the European Union remains at the heart of the matter, asserting its authority over the issue. But how did these nations, who consider each other friends and allies, find themselves entangled in such a fierce trade dispute? Additionally, why has Germany's potential collaboration with Canada raised concerns, even within the European Union? Let's rewind the story and break it down, step by step.
You know, Howard is Secretary of Commerce, doing a fantastic job. And
Nat, it all began when US President Donald Trump targeted Germany's car industry by imposing tariffs on steel and aluminum. Under the slogan, "We must protect America's industries," Trump claimed that the move aimed to revive the country's domestic steel and aluminum production. Viewing trade agreements as largely anti-American, his decision came as a shock to some of the United States' closest allies, particularly Canada and the European Union. Steel and aluminum are vital components in key industries such as automotive, construction, machinery, and defense. Germany, one of Europe's largest steel producers, and Canada, the US's top supplier of steel and aluminum for decades, were quick to respond, labeling the tariffs as unfair. However, Trump didn't stop there. He further threatened to impose an additional 25% tariff on European cars, a move that struck at the core of Germany's economy. The automobile industry, featuring giants like BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and Volkswagen, plays a crucial role in Germany, exporting hundreds of thousands of vehicles to the US market annually. Such a hefty tax would dramatically raise the price of these cars, slash sales, and potentially leave thousands unemployed. As a result, Berlin began reassessing its economic strategies. Trade policy within the European Union is primarily governed by Brussels. Therefore, if Germany wishes to respond to US tariffs, it would typically wait for the European Commission's decision. The Commission had already prepared a counter-tariff list targeting US products, including steel, aluminum, agricultural goods, and whiskey, aiming to restore balance. However, Germany's Ministry of Economy has indicated that relying solely on the EU's lengthy procedures may not be feasible. It emphasized that Germany could pursue national initiatives if necessary. The ministry stated that if the US imposes a 25% tariff on German cars, Germany would retaliate immediately in coordination with the European Union. The proposed counter-tariff list includes products that could significantly impact US exports. Germany's assertive stance has raised concerns within the EU, with some questioning whether Berlin is seeking preferential treatment. However, Berlin insists it is not undermining the union, but rather strengthening it. According to German officials, the country's industry is highly sensitive, and swift action may be required to safeguard it. Meanwhile, European Commission spokespeople are urging calm, acknowledging that while Germany may be acting hastily, its concerns are understandable. Canada, another key player in this dispute, remains among the most affected by the US tariffs, particularly in light of the looming 100% Tesla tariff threat. Canada, which has maintained a significant trade volume with the United States, has long been Washington's largest supplier of steel and aluminum exports. However, former President Trump's tariffs brought considerable strain to Ottawa. In response, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau criticized the US for being unfair and vowed retaliation. Initially, Canada planned a strategy of targeted tariffs designed to impact key lobbying groups in US domestic politics. While Trump believed he could secure a separate deal with Canada, the Canadian government shifted its approach, suggesting that they should not face this challenge alone. This shift opened the door to potential collaboration with Germany, as both countries faced a similar issue. US tariffs would inflate the cost of their products in the American market. A united front between Canada and Germany could pressure Washington to reconsider its stance, especially since the US would have to confront both Canada and the influential German European Union bloc simultaneously. Interestingly, Germany's proposal to explore direct direct trade agreements with Canada, rather than relying solely on the European Union Commission, raised eyebrows in Brussels. Although trade policy typically falls under EU jurisdiction, Berlin justified its stance by citing national interests and the slow pace of EU decision-making. Germany emphasized its existing partnership with Canada under the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, CETA, and expressed openness to separate negotiations or coordinated efforts. While some critics argue that Germany is once again prioritizing its own interests, the European Commission maintains that the unity of the EU remains intact. Ultimately, Germany's initiative may serve as a valuable contribution to a broader, more coordinated response. The Trump administration typically prefers to negotiate with each ally individually, identifying their weaknesses and leveraging them. Instead of treating Europe as a unified entity, it seeks to separate key players, Germany from France, Italy from Spain. Similarly, Canada is brought into discussions under the framework of NAFTA or USMCA. However, an unexpected challenge arises as Germany and Canada recognize their shared grievances and propose joint action. This undermines Trump's divide and conquer strategy. If trade tensions between Washington, Europe, Canada, and China persist, questions remain about how long domestic companies and consumers can bear the strain. Will the White House retreat, acknowledging that it's difficult to sustain conflicts on multiple fronts? Germany's automotive industry, featuring brands like Mercedes, BMW, and Volkswagen, is a critical component of its economy, with hundreds of thousands of vehicles exported to the US annually. A 25% tariff on German cars would raise prices by several $1,000s, leading to declining sales and significant losses. This would impact employment, export revenues, and R&D infrastructure. Canada, deeply integrated into the US market through its automotive sub-industry and raw material supply chains, also faces substantial risks. Both Germany and Canada are now pushing for decisive action, warning that underestimating the issue could lead to severe consequences. While the European Commission aims for a unified stance on tariffs and trade agreements, Germany is keen to engage Canada swiftly to send a clear message to Washington. This approach is causing some uncertainty within the EU. However, Canada and the EU already share a comprehensive trade agreement, CETA. Berlin is leveraging this cooperation to explore synchronized retaliation strategies against the United States. This plan revolves around the argument that simultaneous tax hikes could trigger significant domestic political pressure in the United States if both Canada and the European Union retaliated at the same time. The approach is described as audacious because Germany has abandoned its typical diplomatic restraint, opting for unusually direct language. Germany's economy ministry and the Association of German Industries assert that safeguarding the national economy is essential, as tens of thousands of jobs could be at risk. They made it clear, if the United States takes serious measures, Germany will not hesitate to respond. In response, President Trump may criticize Germany for adopting such a firm stance, pointing out that as allies, they should not impose trade barriers. He might also raise familiar criticisms about Germany's defense spending in NATO. Additionally, Trump could escalate matters by initiating further trade investigations against Germany and Canada, potentially imposing new tariffs under the guise of national security concerns. Such actions would further strain diplomatic relations. Ultimately, there are two potential outcomes. Both sides might choose to de-escalate, pausing to negotiate an interim agreement. Alternatively, a full-scale trade war could erupt. Economists warn that in a trade war, all parties lose. Although the United States benefits from a vast domestic market, many American companies rely heavily on exports. Similarly, Canada and Germany are reluctant to lose access to the US market. Given these stakes, the most likely outcome is a compromise. The United States could reduce or delay tariffs on automobiles, while Europe and Canada suspend retaliatory measures. This compromise would likely be temporary, potentially lasting until after the 2025 United States elections. However, it would at least help avoid a major crisis. Another possible scenario involves extended diplomatic negotiations. Germany and Canada might opt to delay implementing threats, signaling a willingness to talk but without rushing into action. Some voices suggest that if Trump is not re-elected, they would be open to discussions with the next US president. In other words, US domestic politics remain central, leaving trade policy direction uncertain amid the election climate. This situation highlights not only trade disputes, but also the evolving dynamics of transatlantic relations. The complexity deepens given Germany's long-standing skepticism toward Trump's policies. While Canada remains a loyal ally of the US, it is increasingly frustrated by the tariffs. The era of diplomatic soft power is giving way to protectionist strategies and tough negotiations. Adding to the complexity, the Russia-Ukraine war is straining transatlantic cooperation on energy and defense. Germany appears to be aligning its national security strategy more closely with NATO, but insists it won't stay silent on trade issues. Meanwhile, Canada asserts its alliance with the US, but refuses to accept unfair tariffs. Ultimately, Germany and Canada's push for coordinated action against US tariffs signals a potential shift in the global trade landscape. Although the US remains the largest market, export-driven economies like Germany and Canada are preparing a united response to rising protectionism. While this approach might surprise some within the European Union, the EU itself is reportedly considering retaliatory measures against the US, sharing similar concerns. Trump's divide and conquer strategy faces increasing resistance as new trade alliances emerge. The idea that the European Union could pressure Canada into negotiating alone may not unfold as expected due to the strong solidarity between Germany and Canada. The outcome remains uncertain. Perhaps Washington will find a middle ground at the last moment, or a full-scale trade war could break out. The hope shared by all is that this conflict is resolved through negotiation and compromise, rather than escalating into a showdown that could stir economic instability and political unrest. Some speculate that the 2025 US elections may delay the resolution of this issue. In short, the transatlantic relationship, once regarded as the most stable pillar of international trade, is now facing challenges that no one could have predicted. Do you think the united front of Germany and Canada is a realistic stance? Or is it simply diplomatic intimidation? In light of this resistance, will the United States seek a compromise, or will it insist on handling matters on its own terms? Which side stands to lose in this potential trade conflict, and who might emerge victorious? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. We appreciate your support. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and like our video. Even among trade allies, the world of commerce is full of unexpected twists. Let's hope the tensions between Germany, the European Union, Canada, and the United States are resolved with a sensible compromise. If not, a trade war could severely impact both European and North American economies. Stay tuned for updates, and goodbye for now.